This month of October, we're discussing some housing solutions for serving mothers with their children in their custody in tandem within housing solutions. Really excited to hear from our panelists on how they've learned to do this well. I'm sure as most of you who are jumping on are in direct care, you notice that this is a huge gap when we do our certification, when we do our grant application, when we do surveys. One of the biggest things when we ask for disqualifiers, one of the biggest things we see with those who serve adults when they're looking for housing solutions is that they have custody of their children as a huge disqualifier. And so bringing together some wonderful experts who have found solutions for that, and that if that's something that's been on your heart to serve that population, or even if it's not, but you need to know resources for those people who are being disqualified from your programs because they have custody of their children, awesome people to talk to and make referrals to, so that we can hopefully bridge some of that reunification gap when people are looking for services. Hopefully we will have time for question and answer at the end. We're hoping to leave about 15 minutes for that. That will be in the question and answer portion. If you're going to be at Just next week, I will be there. I know Angelica, who's on here with us today, she will be there also. So very excited to see any of you who are going to be there. We'll have a booth, and I'm presenting the morning of the 2nd also. So I hope to get to see some of you guys there. Very excited for that. I'm going to go ahead and start introducing our incredible panelists while people jump on. That will give people another moment. If you all are starting here for the first time and this is your first Safe House Project webinar, my name is Alia Delis. I'm the Director of Aftercare Development for Safe House Project. It's really been my honor this year to do our panel series, our webinar series on different topics related to serving members of trafficking across the spectrum and just bringing together panels of experts. It's in no way my knowledge base that has all of these things. And so I'm just so blessed to be able to bring people who have all of this information and who are there to be a resource for the rest of the industry. And it's really just been a collaborative effort to put on this webinar series, and it continues to be just an awesome example of how this industry works together and gifts each other with the information that we've found so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel on so many things. And so this month, I'm so excited. As I've said, this webinar is on serving mothers in tandem with their children in housing solutions and mothers who are survivors of trafficking. We know that there are a lot of other parents, also people who aren't female identifying, or men who are survivors who have their children, but specific for this webinar, just because that was the services that are usually available. We're speaking primarily about mothers who have been exploited and their children. And so I have our fabulous panelists here that I get to introduce, starting with Angelica, who is right here, a good friend of mine. Angelica is a survivor leader contracted through the Department of Human Services. She provides supportive services to high-risk and adjudicated youth. She's one of the Central Valley consultants with PACT. She's here in Southern California with me, or Central California. Angelica sits on the advisory board, the CSEC advisory board with the National Center for Youth Law. She's a member of the steering committee of the Coalition Against Human Trafficking in Kern County. She co-facilitates awareness trainings with Common Spirit Dignity Health. Angelica believes in recovery with the collaboration of other organizations that victims can turn into victors. She's collaborated with other organizations, safe houses, and recovery programs since 2013. She's overseen Twilight Treasures, whose focus is to reach individuals still active in the commercial sex industry. And in 2021, Angelica became CEO of Redeemed Home, a local safe house in Kern County where they house women 18 and older coming out of the commercial sex industry. And Redeemed Home is a more emergency shelter transitional housing. And we just love Angelica. I've gotten to know Angelica over the last 2 years, and she's just such an incredible person to know. Secondly, we have Mackenzie Heska. She currently serves as the Marissa's Housing Project Manager for Call to Freedom in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. She advocates for women and their children, and that comes from her previous experience as a senior parole agent and field training officer in South Dakota, directly supervising adult women and men released from prison and in the correction systems that had slipped through the cracks. After becoming a mother of two, that passion grew into an intense calling to directly impact women and children suffering at the hands of our systems. I absolutely adore the program that Mackenzie oversees, and they are just an incredible, incredible people. And then last but certainly not least, Suzanne Baker Brown. She co-founded and is currently serving as CEO of Stepping Stones Network. Her passion is to help people find whole life health, spirit, body, and soul so that they can step into the life they were created to live. Her background includes corporate leadership, management, consulting, not-for-profit board experience, and extensive work in women's ministry. And she's also been an advocate for women and women's issues in all of those contexts. So excited to get to hear from you all. We're just going to jump in because these webinars are only an hour, and we always know how fast that goes because you all have such incredible information to share. And so my first question, just to give us a little tee up for why or what you all have found and why it's been so important, explain to me what you were seeing that led you to step into this space of serving mothers who had experienced trafficking with their children.
I can start if
Yes.
you like. So I was doing women's ministry and started to see around 2009, 2010, just the issue of sex trafficking and just so many of us leaders being called in to really start addressing it. And I'd always worked with adult women, so it made sense to just build something for adult women. And as we got going and working towards a communal residential facility for adult women, I started almost every woman that came to our hotline or called us or we heard about had kids. And we're thinking, we can't serve them, so where do we refer them? And there was nowhere to refer them. And then I started watching and I saw more adult women's programs thing. I saw more teen programs starting. And I said, wait a second, there's a gap here. I asked everyone, I couldn't find any home that was doing women and kids, long-term holistic. We could refer them to domestic violence shelters for maybe 90 days, whatever, but there wasn't this long-term holistic program that we all know really brings about the outcomes. We said, okay, no one's doing this. Do we dare jump in and try? And I thought, you know what, I'm not afraid of a challenge, so let's do it. We got some help from Wellspring, which was invaluable. And then the other piece, though, that I do want to mention is we saw a gap, but I wanted to check the research. And when we checked the research, what we found is that a very high percentage of women in prostitution and trafficking have children, number one. And then we found a study where women in prostitution and trafficking were surveyed, and they said that 50% of the children of women in this situation would end up being sold as well. And 87% of those women knew of a child who had died in the context of prostitution or trafficking. That for me was what pushed me over the edge. I was like, look, it's one thing to recover an adult. It's another thing to protect a child from not ending up in the same place. And I felt if we can do recovery and prevention at the same time, let's step in and try this. So that's what did it for us and how we ended up here.
Yeah, and for Call to Freedom, it's pretty similar. We had a housing project. It was 8 one-bedroom little efficiency apartments, which were great. But like you also experienced, there was that gap of most of our clients had children. And so we were then helping them get elsewhere through transitional dollars and things like that, but they weren't ready. They just weren't ready for that, and they needed more support. They needed that daily contact with somebody, a case manager, occupational therapy, all of that, and it just wasn't possible at our other location. And so we expanded then to 1, 2, and 3 bedroom facility. And in that facility, we now have community space, a community room. We just have the space to have all kinds of children. And that was the huge gap that we were also seeing, is just there was nowhere else to put them. There was nowhere else that could do the work and probably didn't want to do the work. And very similar situation here with Call to Freedom.
And I think for Redeemed Home, it was a little similar, but somewhat different. So we started out with Redeemed Home being a discipleship program for just women over 18. And then every referral I was getting, the client had children or was expecting and going to be delivering very soon. So for the first 6 months, we had a full empty house because I was having to constantly turn away the referrals. And going to the board, we're just like, look, we have to make a change. Our house could have been completely full. And so we said, why not?
That's amazing. Thank you. And I love the research that Suzanne, you brought up. And I've seen like, I think 3 people in the chat back to back asking for that research. So I will ask you for that off screen and hopefully we can find it and push it out. But I think that's just so important because no woman who's in exploitation wants that for their child. No one wants their child to end up in that situation that they were in. And yet we are often a product of our environment, unfortunately, regardless of what our parents wish we could have done or what we wish we could do for our children when we're out of resources. And we are stuck in the same systems of exploitation. Unfortunately, we're passing on oftentimes that generational trauma and abuse that we had that puts our children in that same situation at a certain point. Even if that was never our intention and the last thing we would have ever wanted. And so without pathways like this to give our children other options, oftentimes we're stuck in a situation that we never would have asked for and that we believed, oftentimes even in exploitation, we were doing everything to prevent. And so I'm so glad to have you all here to just work alongside the women who are seeking to exit or looking for something different for their children to break that statistic. And hopefully what we'll see is that 10 years from now, that number will have gone down because of the work that you all are doing and that other people who are serving mothers with their children are doing. What would you say what are some of the unique challenges that you found you've needed to deal with in working with this population? Because we know that it isn't just as simple as then we're going to open and have women with children. When you have children as your clients as well, they have specific needs that are different from those of adult women. So what are some of those unique challenges and how did you end up overcoming them? Let's start with Mackenzie this time.
Yeah, here in South Dakota, one unique challenge that we are faced is a childcare crisis where, even if we could find people to open up a daycare, it's staffing daycares and then having the staff there understand that childhood trauma, even the women that we serve, even if their children hadn't gone through a trafficking situation with them necessarily, there's still that separation and still some things for them to work through. And so some of those behavior issues that might be present and having staff that understand that and can work with us through that. Another unique challenge is then finding employers for mom that can employ Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, or that school hours. And then we have one now that has 5 kids, and on any given week, it seems like at least one is sick. And so also having an employer that understands, like, you're a mom, you can't predict when your kids are going to get sick, and just hoping that they will just work with you through that and be understanding. And so really having staff that can connect with community members, whether it's daycares or employers, just understanding that life of a mom. And it's hectic and it's crazy. And then you throw in the women that we serve in that mom guilt of, should I even be going to work? Or should I be spending time with my kid? How do I balance that? And so what we found too is sometimes it's not bringing in the biggest parenting expert. It's nothing like that. It's simply employing other moms to case manage the women here to say, I don't know what I'm doing either. I have to call a friend or a mom or somebody else to support me. It takes a village, and just sharing that mom guilt with them and working through it together. Last week, it was me and our occupational therapist working with a mom, and we were laughing because we were saying we should be taking our advice that we're giving you as far as filling our cups and taking a break when you need it and asking for help. And we looked at each other. We don't do that either when we need to. It's a hard concept to learn. And so making them feel normal in that. And so that challenge there is really, it's just being open and honest about every mom having that struggle. And so we've been really lucky here to have kind of a diverse staff of moms and not moms that can make those employment connections and the daycare connections, but then just moms sticking together and just trying to get through the day.
Yeah.
And I would add on to that is, and all of us know parenting is challenging, even with two parents that don't have a ton of trauma or whatever. And then you add in all of what they've gone through in single parenting and everything else. And so I think in trying to address some of those things, we have to find ways to give the moms, the adults, respite care where they can get some alone time without the kids. We also have to try to find some time, we believe, in trying to actually give a period of time where we cover all of the expenses so that they don't have to work and try to parent and try to go through trauma recovery all at the same time, because it's almost just too much. And so we work and partner with Safe Families for Children, which is actually a national, even now going international organization. So if you're looking at doing something like this, you may want to look and see if you have a Safe Families for Children chapter. We work very closely with them. It's like foster care, only it's when a parent says they want help versus when, the state has taken a child from them for some type of abuse and neglect. And then these families come in, they're mostly faith-based families that have been trained, come in and they take the child for a week, or they take the child for a weekend or for a night or whatever. And we ask that the ones that partner with us, we train them, and then we ask that they plan to build a longer term relationship so that they become part of what we call the safe circle. So we actually focus on building a safe circle of people. Let's say you've got an unsafe circle of people in your life that are pulling you down, that are keeping you from what you want. We want to replace that with a safe circle of people. And we just try to put a bunch of mature women that can just love them, and mature families, and start to help to replace that unsafe and just serve them. And again, we don't have all that perfected, certainly, but we're working towards it. And those are some of the solutions to some of the problems that Mackenzie addressed that are very real.
Yeah. What would you all say are some of the most essential elements that you needed to either have in place or to find in serving women who have custody of their children?
I would say we're big here at Call to Freedom. If they don't feel safe and if they don't have basic needs met, you're not going to get anywhere else. Really, even if you have the best daycare lined up and all of those employment connections and stuff, which are very important and obviously a gap. But we say all the time to our adult women, what makes you feel safe? How do you feel safe? What does that mean to you? But then having staff and people that can ask children that, because last week the answer was, I want a pumpkin paint. And that to me, that's not something I would think of when I think of basic needs or safety. And of course, you're not going to go to a child and say, what basic needs do you need today? But when you say to them, what do you need today? How was your day? Oh, good. But my friend was talking about pumpkin painting and I'd really like to do that. Okay. So learning, it's not always like the biggest hurdle of solutions that you have to come up with. Sometimes it's simply just asking the child and giving that power back to them too, kind of similar with how we work with our women, is what makes you feel safe? What makes you feel safe to ride the bus route with you a couple of times before you feel comfortable? Then let's do that if that makes you feel safe. And so then asking that child, of course, age is always, you can't ask a toddler that, or, whatever. That also goes a long way with the moms when they can tell when your staff loves the children and cares for them. That is a huge rapport builder for the moms as well. And so that to me is essential, is just sometimes if mom needs to vent and I have these other things on my list of things to do and they're in with another case manager, sometimes it's playing Candyland for an hour with their kid just so mom can take a breath and really vent or get some work done or fill out paperwork or whatever needs to get done. And so realizing when you're going into something like this, it may look like playing Candyland for an hour or two with their kids, but that rapport right there is building not only with the child, but then with mom and that trust. And so those kind of things to me are essential, even though it looks a little funny.
And I'll just piggyback right off of what Mackenzie said on the Candyland aspect of that. Like for us, it's trying to tweak, going back to the drawing board and not trying to come up with this like master plan curriculum that we're going to present to our residents. It's just being able to do life with them. At Redeemed Home, we have an opportunity. We have a smaller facility, and myself and my family, we are on-site full-time staff here. And so just being able to do life with our residents has been the most rewarding, and building that rapport with them, because it's, yeah, we're going to have our good days and we're going to have our bad days. And again, partnering with other organizations, making sure that our residents are offsite when they're receiving their case management, when they're receiving any other type of counseling or any kind of services. So that way, when they are at home, it's just their safe haven.
Love that.
Yeah, I would just round out what they both said in that. One of the things that we've learned is when we started, we were so focused on all of the policies and procedures and how do we make sure that this thing is going to be safe and that we do this and we deal with that. And again, we were learning from people who've gone before us who've learned a lot, right? And we wanted to learn from them. But I think what happened in trying to control it all and make sure that we covered every base, we started being a little more about the rules and all of that, and started also being more about what all these exciting programs we can offer and all these different classes we can offer. And all of those things are good. They're all needed and they're necessary. But in reality, once you get into it, the most important thing is listening and loving. Simply listening, loving, being in relationship, being there. And all that other stuff might just be icing on the cake if you can do it well, but it isn't the most important piece. And I think that it has been a huge lesson learned for us. We've even learned that things that we thought we had to do face to face, we've done a ton virtual in this last season that I wasn't even sure, was that going to work? Was it going to really bring about the outcomes we were looking for? And we just had a virtual meeting with all of our 14 families last week. And the feedback that we got was phenomenal, and almost shockingly phenomenal, because I really still feel like we need to get better. We need to do more. We need to whatever, but we've just been loving and being there. And that's what matters to them. And loving their kids, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of my favorite things about this panel that we have here is that you each are serving this population in a very different model. So Mackenzie and Call to Freedom's model is communal living, but apartments. So everyone has their own apartments, and yet there's community spaces, and they're really all together. Angelica is like home because it's on that emergency basis. And so it really is that communal living. And then what Suzanne Baker Brown and Stepping Stones, what you've done is independent apartments and rent subsidies and case management and in even more independent style of this. And so one of the things that I hope that our attendees can see is this doesn't need to be a cookie cutter mold to fit families. There are so many different ways that women can be served with their children. And I know that for many of you in this, you deal with women who have active child welfare cases. I know that Mackenzie's program is looked at in her state at this point. If a woman from South Dakota goes into that program, they right away start reunification. Like, people are seeing the success of what happens when women have support to raise their children, women who are leaving exploitation to have support, and they're following that, and policies are changing and reunification procedures are changing based on the success. And we're only seeing that success when people step into those hard places and facilitate that kind of healing. And so if someone here is considering opening a housing solution for trafficking survivors who are parenting, or expanding to include those who are parenting, what words of advice would you give them, or where would you suggest that they start in that process?
We started with a communal residential, a 4-bed home we could put 4 families in that they all live together. And we went through everything, got CARF accredited, like the whole bit. And it was fine, but so chaotic, so many safety issues, so many even women coming in with a lot of trauma, and then them dealing with other women's kids, and the stairs and the gates. And that was just, It literally was just too much. And we would have kept going. Honestly, we probably would have kept going, and we're very faith-based. The Lord literally was like, nope, we're closing this, and spoke to us and said, put them in their own units, and then gave us a massive grant to be able to do that. What that allowed us to do was in 1 year, we grew from 4 families to 14 families and are doing it at half the cost. It is so much lighter. It is so much more blessed, so much more enjoyable. Everyone, the clients and us, are all just feeling it's just a more full of life experience, quite frankly. And what's been amazing about it is even when we had the communal residential, we had to say we could only take women with children that were 7 and under, because they needed to be littles, and we were worried about the hypersexualization and some of that kind of thing. And then also we just couldn't have, so many people in the house or whatever. With this new model, we can take almost anyone. We have a woman who had both of her legs amputated because of a situation, so who's in a wheelchair. We had a woman, she's not with us anymore, but with 4 children. We have emotional support animals. We have older boys. We have all the things that are typically barriers to entry. We've had people with long-term COVID that we would have had to move them out, or move, like all those crazy that you can't deal with in a communal, we're now dealing with. Now, granted, there are some other issues, like safety issues, that you run into, because obviously you don't have as much control. But for me, if I was someone starting now, I would start with rent subsidies and doing something like this. You do house visits, you do high touch point. You have a lot of people that work with them with different roles and different focus areas. So they're getting multiple calls, at least a call a day, if not more. They have online groups. They have I think you can do it, and you can actually make a big difference. And I just say you do it by being high touch point, very high touch point. And then with that love and support, and meeting them exactly where they are to help them move forward, them and their kids. Now, if I had a lot of money, if someone gave me a bunch of money, what I would do is I would build a multi-unit secure campus where they actually have their own little duplexes with some kind of central place that's secured. So the bad guys can't get in. They can get out when they need to, but the bad guys can't get in. And the kids are safe and secure and can play with one another, but they're all living in their own homes in that. That's what I would do if someone gave me multi-millions. But in the meantime, you can start with some rent subsidies and it actually works. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Here in South Dakota, we have amazing community support. And so we really engaged the community in that, and in some of that funding portion as well. And when we talk about reunifying families, that really tugs on some people's heartstrings, and it should, because that's our future. And that's who we need to be serving right now. And I would say the biggest piece of advice, engage your community where you can. And if it's something like, hey, we need 3 cribs. Can somebody help us with cribs? Can somebody help us with school supplies? So even those little things really add up, and using your volunteers in that way too. And so, for example, we have a teen here who said, so we have groups here at the house, and she came down the other day and she goes, I have a really good idea for a group. And we were like, okay, what's that? She goes, gingerbread houses for Christmas. And so we have a volunteer that used to be an art teacher, and we were like, perfect. She originally volunteered to sign up and help us clean units and such. And we contacted her and we said, hey, we got a kid that wants to make gingerbread houses for Christmas. How about that? And she's, oh my gosh, I would love it. And so just getting creative with your volunteers and their skill sets. So even if they're signing up for something, or even a donor, just getting to know your volunteer base and using that to your advantage. And then they feel really good about it too. And so that's just a really good way to keep your community engaged in this too, and reminding people that this is a community issue. This is not just a state issue or a city issue. It's a full community issue. So let's all be a part of the solution. And if that's making gingerbread houses with people, then that's what you can do. And that's great. And the other thing too, is we've implemented parenting curriculum, which is huge. And I think sometimes when people hear the word curriculum or like school, they get all weirded. Oh, I don't want to sit and learn something, but we really picked something that we can tailor to each individual need. And so we do it, we can, if they prefer to do it with another mom, we're like, that's great, perfect. But if they want to do it individually, we can watch the video and do the curriculum and then say, okay, so the other day when so-and-so didn't listen to you, how did you react? And so using specific examples of what with them, then it's not a generalized parenting curriculum. You can use those examples and using it in that manner and not in a way of this is class or this is a requirement. No, let's use this so it's tailored to you and what you need and where you're at. Because like Suzanne mentioned, you got to meet them where they're at. We have moms of all different walks that differ on medical or school wise or religion or anything like that. And so just having that diverse staff as well, and then using your staff to where they really feel they excel. And we even have one staff member that isn't a mom, but she and another mom have really connected, and they've really built that relationship. So even if you have staff members that aren't moms and maybe don't know like the parenting aspect, they still know healthy relationships. They still know how to just love other people and be a good person and all of those things. And so you don't need to recreate the wheel in that either. It's just having normal people on staff that know how to support people and just how to make people feel. Being a mom, I think, is the hardest job you can have. And that's one of the first things we tell moms is this is the hardest job you're ever going to do. And at the same time, it's the most rewarding and the best job you're going to do. So let's just stick together and do it together. And even if that's me telling stories of when I'm trying to get my toddler ready in the morning and they look at you like, oh yeah, I went through that too. And so just making it a normal experience as best you can.
That was great.
Yeah. And then for me, so I am a survivor, and I started my journey in 2013. I am also a mother of 5 beautiful children. And so I didn't have that opportunity for myself. There was hardly any places that I knew of that were safe havens for survivors of human trafficking with their children. And so I would get to see my kids on the weekends or time away out of the shelter. And I think that recovery process for myself on my healing journey would have been detrimental to my healing journey, not only for mine, but for my children. And so I started becoming very passionate. I knew that this is something that I was to do and something that I always wanted to do since I went through the whole process of going to a safe haven myself, and being able to sit and have dinner with a survivor and their children, and to see those kids smile and look at their moms and to know that they're safe is the most rewarding thing. So my answer is just going to be sweet and simple. That's the most rewarding thing that you can give anybody, is that little one, like just having dinner with his mom, being able to do their nighttime routine and wake up and know that they're safe and secure.
Yeah, absolutely. And Angelica and I have spoken together on this topic before and privately. And my experience is similar in that being a parent who was experiencing exploitation, it drove me deeper into exploitation in an effort to provide for my child because there were no services to exit. And then when I finally reached the point where exit was the only option, where the only survivable option, I had to leave my children behind. And it took 4 years of being out of exploitation to regain custody of even one child because of that lack of ability to exit with my children. And I know that all of us are very passionate about just the need there. And I know that I've had many conversations with people who are on this call as attendees as well. And so I would love to see if you all have any questions, attendees. And if you do, we have a couple, it looks like, that are in the question answer.
Ollie,
so I think,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead,
Something
Suzanne.
to what you just said too,
Yeah.
and Angelica, is that we also have started taking women who have not been legally trafficked, but who are in sex for survival, because we believe, we have seen exactly what you're saying, is that many of these women, they love their children so much, they will do anything, including sell themselves, to feed them and put diapers on them and try to survive. That to me, while it is heartbreaking and it's also admirable. And what I don't want to, and what we don't want to say is, well, because you're not legally trafficked, we're not going to help you. In actuality, if we can help them sooner, they end up with less damage and destruction and less risk that those children end up in the same place too. So we have adjusted our entry requirements for that reason. And we're at about, gosh, I would hate to say our stats, but I would say we're probably about 50-50 of legal, what we call legal trafficking versus, sex for survival.
I'm going to go ahead and answer one of these questions. I think what the question was, what organization are you, I believe it was when you were discussing Safe Families, Suzanne. So what organization is she able to get help from, I believe is what this commenter meant, because they didn't realize there was an option open to families who are not foster families. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in here. So that's the Safe Families. They will step in.
Children.
For children. Yeah, and they will step in that space. And then there's a question directly for you, Suzanne. Would you
I just want to poke in. So in South Dakota, and I believe Montana, it's Lifeline, which is exactly the same as Safe Families, where it's faith-based and the parents can ask for help. It's called Lifeline. So depending on where you're at in the United States, that might be what's closer to you, depending on the location.
Yeah, Google
That's
like
really
child respite care, and that will get you something, whatever's local. Yeah,
and Suzanne, I'm going to send this other question to you privately, and we'll have that sent out just because I want to make sure that we're getting questions that are a little more broad, and we do have one, so maybe we'll have a chance for both. But Teresa asked, what treatment, this is a great question, what treatment is provided to the women on a daily basis? And I think this is an important question because as we discussed in our pre-call, the women are not your only clients. Your clients are also their children. And I know that some of you have specific treatment and curriculum that is for the children as well. So I'm going to go ahead and let you guys answer that.
I can go first. We really tailor that to the individual person. So we don't have a set, like every kid is going to do this and every kid is going to do that. We meet them where they're at. And so if that is an elementary school kid, we do have youth case managers that connect with the school. We're in constant communication with teachers and things like that, and just helping mom keep that communication open. And so then if mom gets a report that a child may need to be medically seen for some issues or behavioral issues or things like that, we can do referrals for counseling or therapy or occupational therapy or whatever that looks like, whatever that means. And so we as a program, we don't have a set, this is what every child that comes into our doors is going to do. We do those assessments. We make sure they see the right people. We do have a director of mental health and therapeutic services, youth case management, occupational therapy. And so between those experts and some individual education plans and things like that through schools, we really work together with those entities. And if for some reason, like if the school or daycare can't provide the service, we make sure they get a referral for whatever service they may need, whether that's play therapy or whatever that looks like. In addition, with whatever assessments and things that we do with mom and getting those referrals, we do the same with kids. And there may be some kids that don't necessarily need the same referrals as others. So we just really tailor that to that family and what they need.
Was the question just about the children or the adults and the children?
It was specifically about the adults, but I thought we could also include the children there as well. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want someone else to answer that, or do you want to go on another question?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So when we had the communal residential, we had all of these different classes every day and all these different things. And then when COVID hit and made everything crazy, and we decided in the end to wrap that up, the new way that we do things now is that we have a basic needs manager who checks in on a regular basis with every single family about anything related to their basic needs, which would be a little more of a typical case manager. And then we have an adult development manager and a child development manager. And then we're adding a therapeutic program lead, which we used to have in the old days. And now we're bringing that back. But with the child development, though, that's just as Mackenzie was saying, that is all very specific. We do have plans to open a child care. We are not there yet. We just won a government grant. So we should be getting that open, hopefully in about a year. We have a location, we have it all set up, all of that kind of thing. But I've learned until we're there, we're not there. But that's the plan. So there will be some more development for the kids down the road. But right now it's very specific by that child development. And we also do a lot of work on pregnancy and parenting. We have a model called PC Care. That's an evidence-based coaching model. It's out of UC Davis in California that Safe Families for Children has adopted. And then we've adopted it as well for parenting coaching. And that stuff is hugely a major focus for us. And then for the adults, we also made a switch in our programming where each day is themed. So instead of having all these classes happening all the time, we say Mondays is routine and planning, life skills, like plan, think ahead, what are routines I need to do, and kind of purpose. We call it purpose and planning. Tuesdays, Thursday's relationship. Tuesdays, I am having a total brain cramp. Wednesdays is parenting. Friday is trauma recovery and addiction recovery and spirituality. What is my Tuesday? Having a brain cramp. Anyway, but the point is, a shift that we made was, at first we had all these classes happening all the time. And we said, you know what, that's too much. Let's just focus on a topic each day that also helps us not only with our participants, we call them participants, but also in getting volunteers and staff members. We call them program leads. We go and get someone who's passionate about that particular area. Sorry, Tuesdays is holistic health. We get the program lead that's passionate about that, and the categories are broad. So then within that, they can do what they need to be able to do. And so the other switch we've made is we've gone to coaching pods now. So every mom has a coach that meets with them once a week on their particular goals. And then because we want to build more community because of this independent model. So like I have 3 coachees, and then my 3 coachees meet once a week around a particular topic, which right now we're doing safe people and relationships, so that they start ministering to one another and building that community that we don't have anymore because they're not all living together. So that's been our response to be able to build that. And that's actually going really well, and they really like it. Those are just a couple of the things that we're trying to do from a standpoint of programming.
And then with Redeemed Home, all of the residents have had babies. So we've had toddlers. So I haven't had to do the curriculum or anything like that with any of the residents this far, since we are fairly new. And we have baby items. So right now I'm just, those are what we're doing. We're just finding mommy and me type play groups and just going from there and learning as I'm growing, and each individual and each resident, as they come in with a different age of their child, then I will tweak the curriculum that we have.
Love that. This is wonderful. And then one other final question. Do you typically register children for school, those of you that had school age children? Because I know you're taking them from, even if it's from the greater state area, you're taking them from out of the direct area. So are you registering them for school right away, or do you allow time for them to settle? How does that work?
For us, it's dependent a little bit on the situation. Typically, if it's a reunification process and it's a little bit more scheduled, like through our Department of Social Services and such, typically they're in school right away, which kind of helps get them back into their routine a little easier. This last week, we had them take a long weekend. So it was Thursday, Friday, Sunday, or Saturday, Sunday, and just had mommy and me time. And then by Monday, they were ready to get back into a routine. And so we really look at the situation and what is best. We had one with 5 that the first 2 to 3 weeks of school, there was too much going on, and that was too much. And we just really communicated with the school that this is what's going on. And so we have good relationships in that way, that there was a reason why that needed to happen. But typically here, we try to get everybody back to a normal routine as soon as we can and as soon as it makes sense, just because we found that gives mom peace of mind, that gives kids peace of mind. And that's generally speaking, we've done it a little bit differently each time, it seems like, but generally speaking, that routine is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Suzanne, this question is for Stepping Stones. Are you limited to a particular geographic area? I know the answer, but
it's interesting. Right now, we started out, we were in one county. We literally are in 4 counties now, which again was not our plan. I'm telling you, the way we're going with the flow. And we are working on now we've decided that we want to put like a percentage, about 50% of our participants in a local place where they are getting face-to-face programming and face-to-face childcare, and that about the other 50% would be more distributed and really could be anywhere that is within region of being able to do home visits. But we also are going to start looking for churches and partners that are in some of the places that are a little further away. If there's somebody we want to take, so for them to do the home visits, because the home visits are very important. We can do a lot virtually. We need to be in their home. We need to go in their home. We want to build those relationships. It helps us understand what they and their kids need. So that part is critical to the process. I do think the model that we've done could possibly be duplicated and or grown exponentially almost, but we need to do more learning first before we could go there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's all of our hope, is that eventually there will be services like this in every area. And I know that you are not the only people doing this, which is amazing. And we just hope to see more and more people stepping into this space. And just a reminder for everyone who is attending, we can only do so much in the webinar. We could have a whole webinar on serving the mental health of the children, serving the mental health of the adult, on the childcare aspect of that, on all of the developmental needs. There's so many more topics around serving people who have custody of their children when they're seeking housing solutions who've experienced trafficking. And so my hope through this is that you have some resources now, you have some people who are doing it, you continue to have these conversations, and that hopefully we'll be able to have everyone on again next year, maybe to talk about one of those smaller topics and really dive into a lot of the meat of what it looks like to serve this population. And I'm excited for you all with the holidays coming up to see some of these kiddos get to experience that. I know that was something on our webinar called just the normalcy. It isn't always just all of these big things, but just some of those normal moments that when a mom is experiencing exploitation are so abnormal in that life and with their children, or either in separation or just in the trauma of what is going on in their life. And so excited for you all to get to witness it, and even more excited for the moms that you're serving, that they get to just experience what it's like to have a Thanksgiving meal if they celebrate that. And there's so much that we could talk about: cultural competency in parenting. So many things like that would be so important to have an entire webinar around. And so hopefully we'll get to have those next year, maybe 1 or 2 of those conversations. But until then, do you all have anything else that you would like to add, or that you'd like our attendees to walk away with?
I think for us, it seems like every Friday or so, the staff and I here just look at each other. Okay, everybody's safe, everybody's clothed, everybody's fed, we've got smiles. So we did our job this week. And so there's some weeks that it's going to be like that. And there's other weeks where you're going to say, wow, we moved mountains. And so just remembering that. And then when those moms get overwhelmed, reminding them, ask yourself, are your kids safe? Are they clothed? Are they fed? They're here with you. That's it. And just the big takeaway is going back to the basics, asking yourself those questions.
And just meet them where they are. Do not worry about being perfectionist or having just one program, one track. Another mistake we made, just everyone, this is the track. Drop all that. Just meet people where they are and love them and be in relationship. And then you can add and get fancier if you want. They just need safe people.
Angelica, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think they touched on it. It's exactly what I was going to say. Just to love the whole process, and remember that this is their journey, not ours. And just be patient, and it's so rewarding. It is really rewarding. I myself, again, I'm a mother of 6, and just am so grateful for having somebody allow me to have the journey that I did.
That's amazing. And I just couldn't echo that more, and couldn't be more grateful to know you all and serve you all, along with everyone here that attended. And so the rest of the questions that were maybe a little more pointed or a little more, not pointed wouldn't be the right word, specific to one person, I will gather, I will have them answered for you, and I will send them out to you individually. And thank you all so much. And I look forward to seeing some of you guys at Just and you all very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye. Bye-bye.